Hello, fellow human. Welcome back to the Arduino Basics tutorial series. This is lesson number 8, where we're going to be learning how to use a button in our circuits. Let's go through the wiring that you're going to need to set up in order to do this project. Once we've set up the wiring, we'll explain a little bit more about how the button actually works. To start, you'll need a few materials. You'll need a 220 ohm resistor, a 10 kilo ohm resistor, a standard 4-pin push button, and an LED. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect pin number 4 up onto our breadboard. I've got mine going to pin 20. Make that a yellow wire. Next, I'm going to put my button on the bridge of my breadboard. So here's a standard 4-pin button. With the buttons, you'll notice that the pins stick out on opposite sides. So 2 pins on one side, 2 pins opposite. And we're going to cover over the bridge of the breadboard with our button. So the bottom left-hand leg is connected through to pin number 4 on our Arduino board. Next, we're going to take the top left-hand leg. We're going to connect it through a 10 kilo ohm resistor to the ground row. So now I have the top left-hand leg connected through a 10 kilo ohm resistor to the ground row. The top right-hand leg, we're just going to connect with a wire directly to voltage. So our button, bottom left leg pin going down through pin 4 in our Arduino. Top left through a 10 kilo ohm resistor to ground. Top right through a voltage wire to the voltage row of our breadboard. Next, we're going to wire up our LED, which we're already familiar how to do. I'm going to use pin number 8. Connect it up onto my breadboard. Then I'm going to use a 220 ohm resistor over the bridge of my breadboard, the long leg of my LED pin, and then the short leg through to ground. So this is what our completed circuit will be. How does the button work? What's happening inside of a button, as you can see in this pinout, is that the opposite legs are already connected to each other. So top left and bottom left are already connected. Top right and bottom right are already connected. Pushing in the button makes the lateral connection. So it would connect bottom left to bottom right or top left to top right. So right now our pin number 4 is connected directly through the button to the ground through a 10 kilo ohm resistor. When the button gets pushed down, it is going to connect top right and top left. Now that voltage, that current, is going to be choosing between going through the 10 kilo ohm resistor to ground or with no resistance into the Arduino. Well, it will choose the path of least resistance and it will come into the Arduino. And that's where we're going to get our button reading when the voltage is passing through. So when the button is pushed, voltage is going to pass through to the Arduino. When the button is not pushed, no voltage is going to pass through. We call this a passive low state. You can switch this ground and voltage wire and create what's called a passive high state, but we're not going to worry about doing that in this particular lesson. So here we are in the code interface for lesson 8. I've created a new file, new sketch called lesson 8, and we're ready to start our code. So we're going to start by declaring a pin for the LED and a pin for the button. As you remember, we wired up our button to 4 and our LED to pin 8. So I've assigned those variables to those particular integer values. Next, in our setup function, we're going to have to set those as input or output pins. So our LED pin is going to be an output pin. Our button pin is going to be an input pin. I'll normally set up the serial monitor as well, just in case I need to do any debugging in my program. That's it for our setup function. Let's head over to the loop function next. So inside of our loop function, we need a variable that's going to tell us the state of the button, whether it's high or low, on or off. So what I've done is I've created an integer called button state that's going to do a digital read on the button pin. Remember, button pin is an input, so it's going to be listening to pin number 4 for the state of the button, and it's going to read it as an integer. Now that integer we can think of as 0 or 1, or we can also think of it as the constants low and high. So now we get into if statements. So we're going to set up an if statement that's going to check the state of the button. The way an if statement works is it's going to check the condition. Is button state equal to high? If it is, it's going to run the code inside the curly brackets. If it is not true, it's going to skip the code inside of these curly brackets. So in here, we need to turn the LED on, which we've done before using a digital write LED pin high. Then we can do something called an else statement. An else statement says if the if statement is not true, therefore the code inside these curly brackets does not run, it will automatically look for an else. If there's an else, it will run that code instead. And this creates an either or situation. Either do this or do this, but don't ever do both. In the else, I can do a digital write LED pin low. And this is going to turn my LED back off. So if the button is reading a high value, it's going to turn the LED on. Otherwise, or else, in any other situation, which would be low, it's going to turn the LED off. So let's push this out to our board and test it and see if it works. And here we have it. As I'm holding down the button, the LED is on. When I release the button, the LED turns back off. So it's working the way that we wanted it to work. Great job with the base lesson. For the extension, instead of having the LED off when the button isn't being pressed, have the LED dim, and then when the button gets pressed, the LED should brighten up. I'll give you a hint. You will need to mess with your wiring and with your code to make this happen. And remember when we talked about analog versus digital, how that affects the pins we use and how that affects the calls that we use inside of our code. Good luck. For the challenge for lesson 8, you're going to need to look into using a variable as a toggle, because what I want to happen now is when I press the button, the LED should turn on. When I press the button again, the LED should turn off. But I shouldn't need to hold the button down for it to stay on. Think of it like a light switch when you enter a room. This one's going to take a little bit more digging, and you might have to do some research online to make it happen. Good luck, and I'll see you back here in lesson number 9. Thanks for watching, and if you liked what you saw, like the video and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date as we post more in the Arduino Basics tutorial series.